This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. We're now in season 6. Thanks to all of you tuning in and sharing the podcast with your friends to keep the momentum going. This podcast is dedicated to all things horse and all things that uplift equine well-being and welfare. And I'm having down-to-earth conversations with equine professionals about the little things that move the dial slowly but surely towards a better world for horses. You'll find all the episodes, 93 and counting now, on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for being here and enjoy the ride. Oh, hey there. Thanks for being here for the Whole Horse Podcast. You are here for a podcast with Susan Tenney. It's our 3rd episode together, and it's a 3rd in the series around burnout and how to navigate this seemingly much more common issue in our forever striving culture. So Susan and I get into that during this episode, and I hope you have a listen. Also, the Whole Horse Apprenticeship, my main 6-month program, starts in about 3 weeks, and I hope that you might join us there. We are really diving into the big question of how we can do better by our horses, and this program is filled with people that are asking the same question, and also people that I've found in my work that are answering it in their own different ways. So I hope that you can join us. If you use the coupon code DIVA50, that's DIVA 50, you can head to the registration page and use that for $50 off. And the registration page is www.alexalinton.ca/whole-horse-apprenticeship. You can check out more information there on what is involved in this very immersive, thorough program, and I hope to see you there. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here, and you're here for the Whole Horse Podcast. Welcome. I'm here today with a favorite podcast guest. Susan Tenney's here today with us. Welcome, Susan.
Oh, it is always a pleasure to be here with you.
I think this is number 3 now.
Yes.
Excellent. And if you haven't had a chance, go back and have a listen to my other podcasts. Have no idea what episode numbers they are, but they are great. Check them out with Susan Tenney. So Susan, most people that have listened know who you are. Susan is the founder of Elemental Acupressure, and we wanted to sort of make this we've done these 2 podcasts, the first with Elsie and Lockie and the second with Dr. Tracy Rainwaters. And in the second one with Tracy, I talked about these different professionals reaching out to me and saying, hey, like, this really landed with me so strongly. I cried through the episode. I felt like so seen. And Susan was one of the ones that reached out to me around that as well and said, this is how I felt with that. Thank you so much. And also, I've got some tools. Because one of the biggest questions I have gotten from all of that is, what do we do? I mean, we're all freaking burnt out. Like, what do we do with that information in the culture soup that we're in around grind culture, all those things? How do we help? So that is one reason why we're here today to chat about that. But I would love to hear, Susan, what about that podcast with Lockie and Elsie and I landed for you specifically?
Yeah. And so first of all, let me say that it's going to be hard to encapsulate it. I mean, I lived both of those episodes for like 24 hours after listening to them, because I'm like, yes, this is the conversation that the horse world needs to have, especially with its professionals, because I think we have like turned up to 11 a lot of the issues that we're going to talk about. But it's for everybody. It's not just for us, for sure. But I think the big thing is that we have just, as a collective, gone through this huge experience that, because we lived it day by day by day through COVID. I think we've already kind of forgotten. We kind of just want to like put it in the past and, oh, that was back then. And 2020 seems kind of long ago. But the truth is, as a collective, we've all gone through a fairly traumatic experience, and that brought up a lot of fear. It brought up all sorts of politics. It brought up all sorts of issues around healthcare and inequality. I mean, it brought up so many things that we as a collective culture need to support each other with. Some things we're doing better with, some things not so much. And I think a lot of us, that was kind of this tipping point where we'd been kind of working our way along through stuff. And I saw a lot of horse people in that time. Like that was the straw that was like too much. Put that together with fair, people were sometimes having insecurity around income and insecurity around, just how's the world going to go from this point forward? What does this all mean? And I think it brought up a lot of our survival fears. It brought up a lot of overwork because we're like, well, I got to work twice as hard and double down on things to make sure that I come out of this all right. And I think the big thing that for me is just top of mind is watching how we can help each other learn coping skills that are gentler and kinder, and in many ways absolutely counter to the way I see a lot of horse people treat their precious selves. And so it's hard to put it all in one word. I have like this tumble of words I want to say, but I'll stop there.
Yeah. And I think personally, we, like Tracy, we have a similar, path going on. We're both teachers, both content creators. We're out there. We are our brands. There's, all of the pressure that can come with that as well. And the pressure that we put on ourselves in that too,
Huge.
And, I think one thing that I heard a lot of people saying was, well, great, like I'm burnt out, but like, what about survival? What about money? What about like, how do I even, start out of this place that I found myself in where, like it might be as extreme as mine, where it's like, I literally can't do anything, or less extreme, where it's like, I'm just tired all the time.
Yeah.
I've lost my passion for things. As we know, as content creators, it's like when you lose your passion for things, it's really hard to create and inspired to like get out there and be, like building things, right? Because you're like, I just want to nap, actually.
Exactly. I mean, for example, also there are age considerations as well. And so, for example, look at your lovely Elsie, who helped you in that podcast. I don't know how old she is. She looks to me quite young. She looks like,
early 20s.
Just getting started and super excited and impassioned. And we get that. You mentioned on the last podcast that you're in your early 40s, as with
Tracy.
Tracy. And I can say I'm 20 years past. Okay. So I'm turning 60 this year. So all of the issues that we're talking about, I loved hearing Elsie say, look, I'm listening to my elders. And saying like, oh, there's a better way we can do this. So smart, so wise. But then I also listened to the two of you saying, I want to embrace my crone. You were talking essentially about that. And I'm like, I'm a little closer to that crone thing. I can say that this aging thing doesn't get better if you don't take care of all of these issues that we're talking about. And I, in some ways, love getting old. Like it's the best thing ever. Why didn't anyone ever tell me that I'd have better understanding? I'd have that level of kind of trust in self. And there's so many good things that come with aging. So many. I love being 60 or almost 60, but it does also come with that package of growing older. And when I turned 40, so more or less where you guys are now, I felt this little switch in my body as if it said, you just don't have quite the level of energy that you used to. Now, was that because I turned 40? Or was it because I had a 2-year-old and I had given birth as a 38-year-old woman? It's probably a little of both, right? So, my situation doesn't have to be everybody's situation, but I think it's pretty inevitable that as we age, we have a little bit less juice to pull from. And so we have to be more cognizant of our choices, of our habits, of our mindset, of so many things in order to be living the life that we want to do, achieving all these incredible goals. Most horse people that I know are so passionate about what they're doing. They don't want to stop. They don't want to retire like this. Like, why would you retire from your passion? No, you want to keep going like Sally Swift until you're in your 90s. And that's great. And we have models of that through Sally, through Linda Tellington Jones, through these incredible, inspiring individuals that have changed everything in their work and just kept going. But there is also this balance of, yes, we need to keep going and keep exploring and having fun with that, but we also need to protect this vehicle that we're taking through those adventures so that that vehicle can continue to help us deliver that message. And that's not going to work if we're totally burnt out and we just have to pull off of everything and restore. It's a lot easier if we can figure out ways to do that in micro doses so that we don't have to take those bigger times out.
Yeah. It feels so obvious when you say it,
Totally.
right? But also it's this sense of when I hit that rock bottom moment, it literally, like, the metaphor I had was my well is not just like mushy dry, but like cracked and dry, like there is nothing left.
Yeah.
The sense that I had was, to get out of this, I need to be able to start to put water back in the well without immediately spending it again. It's kind of how, right?
Yeah.
Without
100%.
Because what we do as horse people often, or just people in general, but I've seen this a lot with horse people, and I get it. It's like that gritty part of us. Yep. As soon as there's water in that well, I'm using it, right? Yeah. And for the most part, we can get away with it because there's enough to kind of sustain us. I didn't even really believe that I actually had like a bottom to my well, but learn that the hard way. And so I think this, what you're saying about, okay, how do we do these micro actions every day, or like consciously, to actually build our stores, build our well? Because I can say, as someone who's ridden, I don't know, since I was well, I've always wanted to ride, but I started riding lessons in genuine when I was like 11. So, that's a good chunk of my life, 30 years. I've identified as a rider, as we tend to. And I can honestly say that riding is exhausting for me now. And it's so hard to admit, because it's like, it's an identity piece for me. Oh yeah, I can go out on a 4-hour trail ride. Oh yeah, I can gallop my horse around the field, or do these things, or do a lesson, or start a young horse, whatever it is. And it's just all of those things, when you are getting to that burnt out space, start to feel further and further away from something that is supportive, I suppose, for you. Like, even though you want to do it, it's like, oh, can I? Like, is it something that I can? And I'm with you. It's like, I want to be able to, if I choose to, ride or muck a stall or do the things or lift a hay bale or whatever until I'm a goodly age, I'd say,
Totally.
Right. Totally. And that reality check of, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do that, has been really sobering.
Yes.
And so, I'm super excited to get into, okay, what are some of those things? Like, what are some tools that we can bring into our world that actually help with this,
Well, I think, for example, one thing that is staring us in the face, and we kind of poo-poo it, And even though we'll read, Facebook posts about it, do we really do it? Maybe, maybe not. And that is, we're supposed to be sleeping for 1/3 of our life.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be sleeping, let's say, give or take, depending on who you are, what your needs are, et cetera, somewhere around 8 hours a day out of a 24-hour day. That's a lot of rest. I think that's showing us that that is a biological need to be balancing all that exciting activity that we love and we're passionate about and just brings us joy and all that good stuff. And that time, we now know, as they study the brain more and more, they always thought, like, what's sleep for? Like, what good does it do? And they didn't have many good biological reasons. They hadn't figured it out yet. And in recent years, I forget the exact science, but there's actually this cleansing process of the brain that occurs when we rest, when we sleep, that if you don't sleep, you're not doing the brain cleaning that you need to do. So it's kind of like, kind of a detox or cleaning. It's kind of like if you never clean your house, but you live in it full on and you do all your stuff. Well, it's not going to be a great place to live. And we want our brains, as we age, to be a great place to live. We all want our bodies to be a great place to live. And, spending time with family members that deal with dementia, that deal with physical ailments, believe me, you do not want that. It is not something you want to choose. And so when we understand that our brains, our bodies, our souls, our spirits absolutely positively need sleep to the place where even 1/3 of that, we're supposed to be not unconscious. I mean, we're not in a coma, but that 1/3 is when the off switch is supposed to be activated, and we're supposed to be restoring and renewing and resting. That, I think, gives us that clue of knowing this is a biological imperative if we want to thrive. If you don't want to thrive, okay, go for it. But if you want to thrive, you got to sleep. And for anyone that's ever dealt with insomnia, it's the worst, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is, if you're not taking care of the body and the brain and all of these things we want to talk about, it's harder to sleep well. So the quality of your sleep will go down because your nervous system is freaking out. Your nervous system is just on edge, and it has that harder time getting those cortisol levels, getting those happy adrenals where they need to be. So all of a sudden sleep becomes harder. So you're just making things harder and harder for yourself. Now, before I go one step further, I also want to say, as I am speaking these words, I am not speaking them as one who has figured it all out, because intellectually, academically, I know this, I've studied it, I've taught it for 30 freaking years, and I'm still struggling to figure out my part of it too. Like every single day, I am still having to confront my crap behaviors and habits that is not living what I'm teaching. And that is the struggle for all of us. Mm-hmm. But I think the whole thing is about us focusing on gentleness. If we can get to gentleness, we are going to make a huge change in everything.
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I just want to reflect here. Like I have, my osteo clients do intakes before they come in. And one of the things is sleep.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, pretty like once in a while, someone will be like, I sleep great. And everyone else is like, well, I wake up a couple of times. I have a hard time getting back to sleep. I maybe sleep, 5 to 6 hours. And is the sleep restful? Unless we're being very, very conscious of, okay, I'm going to let my body dial down for an hour. Like I know for myself, if I try to, like I've been watching Ted Lasso lately, it's so good. But then we end the episode at 10 o'clock and I'm wired, right? I'm up. Yeah. Because it's so good.
You're thinking about it, you're processing all these fun, you lived that life that was on the screen for the last hour or whatever,
And then it's really like at that point, it's like, okay, lights out, but like not lights out in Alexa's brain. Alexa's brain is still up for a good chunk. after that, right? And potentially, trouble settling, all these things. So there's a lot of healthy habits that I see on my end, and I'm sure that you can further enlighten us on like what it looks like to actually achieve and prioritize good sleep.
Yeah, yeah. So what I actually brought with me was a quote today,
We
and this
love
is from an
quotes.
article that's been kind of like going around recently, and I kind of latched onto it. I posted it, and then some of the other people like would post it because this is exactly where we need to focus. So the quote that really stuck in my mind, that really
Yeah.
just helped me kind of dial into what I wanted to say. If you take only this away, I think you've got it, which is, if toughness is a survival skill, gentleness is a thriving skill. And they are not mutually exclusive. Being gentle with yourself doesn't mean shying away from hard things. When we learn to be gentle, we allow ourselves to recover from stress, enjoy our lives, and connect deeply with those around us. And that is by Ingrid Bethel Lee. And I actually will share the source of that. It's a whole article about this whole topic. What this, of course, is just like dialed in for me is that my focus, what I teach, what I work on, my biggest passion is working with the 5-element theory from classical East Asian medicine. And there's other podcasts you can go and hear me talk about all of that. But essentially, what I wanted to talk about is the water element, because the water element, out of these 5 that we study, we use with horses, we use with acupressure and all these wonderful things that we do. Well, the water element is the one about rest. It's the one about core, deep vitality. It's our deeper resources. It's our survival instinct, but also our instinct to rest, recover, and renew. It is associated with the season of winter. And it's that concept that if we don't have winter in the cycle, when, if you're in a 4 seasons climate, the snow is on the ground and it's protecting this regeneration that's happening unseen, not productive, quote unquote, right? It looks like nothing is happening, quote unquote. Well, there's a ton happening, and that is regeneration and getting ready to burst forward in spring. And that sense of gentleness, of healing, of restoration, renewal, repose, all these words is exactly, it's that is like having to go backwards, having to reflect and before you can go forward. And instead of this kind of, no, I don't at all want to not be supportive of cowboy and cowgirl culture. I love it, right? We all love that image. We all love that, the gutsiness and the rawness and the badassery that comes with all that. But we also have to learn how to be gentle. And there is a certain toughness that we as horse people embrace and admire. And sometimes we also need to be gentle. So there's all this incredible work from all these incredible people that are breaking ground on all these amazing new ideas, like yourself, bringing the idea of gentleness to our horses. But what about us? We're not working on that gentleness with us. So for me, the very first step in all of these journeys is we've got to change our own mindset about ourselves if we plan to bring that with our full heart and understanding and embodiment to the horse. How can you teach the horse this? How can you offer that for the horse if you don't truly understand the violence you do to yourself by not caring for self? And it is violence. I use that word, it's a little startling, but it's true. We are violent to ourselves when we don't care for this precious vehicle that we have to take us through these lives that we love living. So first step is mindset. Embracing gentleness.
That word, I resonate with that so much, because I think, I was raised in a way, I think many of us were, where the belief was, the more I endure, the more worthy I am. Something along those lines. And this sense that, like the more I go through, the more I tough it out, the more I push myself beyond my means, take myself not just a little out of my comfort zone, but just throw myself, down the road from my comfort zone and hope that I make it back. All those things meant that my value was greater. I was more worthy of what love, I don't know what, but there was this real ingrained understanding of that I think drives many of us,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
some level, some
Yeah.
rendition of that. And it factors into all these pieces. Like you start to unravel, like you're, speaking, Susan, about sleep. It's like, oh, do I allow myself to prioritize a nap in the afternoon, rest in the evening, eat, making sure that I eat at a certain time so that I'm like, I know for myself, if I eat late, sleeping is hard for me, right? My body, and in Chinese medicine, they talk a lot about this. It's like, eating past a certain time, it's a lot of energy for the system to be able to handle. And yet I think as horse people, it's common. I fed the horses at 8:30, then I came in, I grabbed a bite, I grabbed my dinner, sat down in front of the TV, went to sleep. And then all the pressure that puts, we don't even think about it, all the pressure that puts on the system to have to digest at a time where it's actually not set up for that, right?
And I also think Lockie, in the first one in this series, brought up such a good thing. I loved that he brought this up. So he is now really traveling and going from his Australian culture, which he knows and understands and has his own preconceptions about, oh, that's how the world is, and then comes here to North America and says, what the hell are you guys doing? You are not resting. You're pushing too hard, and you're doing that with your horses too. And he talked about also being in Europe, where it's different than the States. And as someone who's lived in Switzerland, I saw that too. And it was really disorienting at first. So the first time I taught a class in the French part of Switzerland, which is a very different culture than the German part of Switzerland, very different. They said, okay, we're going to go for lunch. So everybody got together, and very typical, there was a local little restaurant. It's already kind of prearranged. Everybody goes down. And so I'm used to, like, in the US, it's a half hour for lunch, but I was used to European, 60 minutes for lunch. Well, at 2 hours, when nobody had even finished their coffee and they were clearly not going to go anywhere, I kind of had to say, we better get back, or you're going to spend the rest of your afternoon here and not get your clinic that you paid money for. And then, like, this time, in order to rest in the middle of the day. And it was like, yeah, like, to an American, a 2 hour plus lunchtime, like, this is inconceivable. And yet they were looking at me like, what's your hurry? So I think it's that, the fish doesn't notice that they're swimming in the water, like they don't recognize. And we don't recognize that these cultural things that we think are normal, this is the way the world is not. We can make different choices. And you don't have to take a 3 hour lunch break, but finding those places of rest, little bits of rest, and serving yourself through the day is a lot better for sustainability than that, like, you can sleep when you die. That's just toxic. And it's fun, and we've all been there, and you can do it from time to time, but it's not sustainable. So I think that once you've changed your mindset, and like I'm open to learning, like I'm open to taking some ideas about all of this vitality stuff. The water element, out of the 5 elements from Chinese medicine, tells us that we can be gentle with ourselves in our decisions. We can take those little bits, those little snacks of gentleness throughout our day. We don't have to set aside a holiday once a year where we collapse for 3 weeks. No, we can do this a little bit each day. When a 15-minute break that restores you and renews you because you just sat down and ate a healthy snack, or did a meditation, or looked up at the sky, or pet your horse, that might be all you need in that moment to help you restore and return to self. And it helps you feel your body. It helps you feel the emotions and go, oh, I'm feeling really tense. What's going on? Oh, that task that I'm working on kind of, so focused. Maybe there's another way to do it. And those are those moments when you take them off. That's when the eureka comes. That's when the flash of inspiration or the creative idea or the insight of, oh, there's another way to do that. And the other part of that is not only taking care of ourselves, but also asking for help. And I think that's one thing that you were talking about in both podcasts that is really hard. I think there's this honoring of self-sufficiency and I can do it and I'm independent and I'm strong and I'm tough. And we need some of that, right? So toughness is good. Toughness is absolutely necessary for us in the world, but it's also okay to ask for help and to support each other. So if your friend came to you and asked for help, you wouldn't bat an eyelash, you'd do it. Of course, you love them, you want to support them, but we are afraid to ask for that help. And they would look at us and say, well, of course you can ask for help. That's normal, natural, and let me help you. And it is something that we don't want to be weak, or we feel we're being needy, or, oh, they already have so much on their plate. Like we have all these excuses, but the truth is we're just afraid to ask for help. And it's getting in the way of us serving. So there's a saying that's been going around recently in my circles that says, I serve, I deserve. I can see there's some wisdom in that, but I don't think you have to serve in order to deserve. Just because you deserve. I'm really iffy on that deserve word. Just because you are, it's okay to give to yourself. You don't have to do something to earn that rest or earn that nap or earn that healthy snack that costs a little more. No, that's okay. And
yeah, I love that. I think the asking for help piece, I mean, that's a huge unpacking. I think culturally speaking, this sense of sort of, like I'm separated from something, or we kind of we can easily miss the sense of I'm a part of something, or, my well-being actually supports the well-being of the whole, so that I'm not a burden when I'm asking. And actually, this is a way that I'm contributing, and also that I'm making myself available to be asked for the help in the ways that I can provide it, right? And I think that's you're right, it's an act of courage. It's an act of courage to ask for help.
100%. 100%. And again, I don't want to get too political or whatever, but I think as women, it's particularly challenging for us to ask for help. We are trained from day one to be givers, which is wonderful. I mean, I love being a mom. I love supporting my family. I love doing all these wonderful things for the people that I love. No problem with that. That is good. But I was also kind of given that message of, in order to be resilient, you have to be, tough and individual and do it yourself. And no one's going to help you, ultimately. Yeah. I mean, of course I'm ultimately responsible. Yeah, that's true. But I'm going to get there a lot faster if I have a team behind me of people who are cheering me on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I see that. I mean, I'm not a mother myself, but I've witnessed, like I have many friends, of course, and I've witnessed people doing not only mothering humans, but mothering horses and other beings. And what I see is the ones that are most, I'm not going to say successful, because I think that goes sort of in the same category as deserving, but the ones that are seeming to have reserves left, to be feeling supported, are the ones where they kind of are really prescribing to, it takes a village, there's grandparents involved, there's family members, there's friends, everybody's supporting and taking part and a part of those kids' lives or those horses' lives. This is how I roll too now, where I have friends that know my horses, love my animals, and that I can ask to come in, step in when needed. I've trained my partner Patrick up to be a horsey guy, like to have these spaces and places where we can lean on people as needed. And the cool thing is, like, that also supports them, like to have that time. It's a connector as well. If we do it not from a place of guilt, but like, really just asking. And I find this so important is like trusting that the person that you're asking has the capacity to say no. And if you feel like they're, say, a real yes person, like they're not a person that ever says no, then really checking in with them around that aspect and how they're feeling about that and whether this is a true yes for them, because that's critical. You want that, especially when someone's taking care of your babies, like my horses are my babies. I want someone to come to it with a full yes. My goal with my horses is like anybody that's caring for my horses loves them, not as much as me because I'm a little excessive, but like getting on par, right? And that their yes is a full heartfelt yes in that space, right? And that I can trust them to tell me no, that they feel safe telling me no.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And vice versa, yeah.
And one of the big phrases there is feeling safe. So again, I'm returning to this water element concept, and I know you know all of this, but
not all. I'm learning.
Aren't we all, right? But the water element is very much about that feeling of fear versus faith. So it's very much about survival. It's that lower chakra. For those of you that know chakras, it's like first and second chakra. It's that taking of actually really feeling safe, like you can trust that you're okay, that you can handle it, that the world is safe. Like it's not perfect, but it's safe, and you're going to be alive by the end of the day, most likely, barring some unforeseen whatever. You're safe. And I think what happens with a lot of us is the water element is also very, very closely tied to the brain and the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this incredible nervous system that is giving us so much information and is helping us do everything we do in the world. It all comes from the brain and the nervous system. And we talk, you were talking about polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve and all these amazing things that are really coming into more public consciousness right now. Mm-hmm. And I encourage everybody to go and read up on that because it's such good stuff. But with the water element is very much involved in that safety versus danger response. So think of your adrenal glands. If you don't feel safe, so if you're a horse and you see a mountain lion off to the side and you know you have to run for your life, you got to use your adrenals to like say, okay, all systems go here. We need to get out of here to be able to live to see the next day. And so our adrenals are our friends. They are here to keep us alive, but they are not supposed to be used every single day of every single moment because we are under these chronic, low level, and yet intensely consistent levels of stress. They are here. Those adrenals are there to kind of just be the backup plan. And we are using them as that's how I'm going to get through my day 7 days a week. That's not how we are designed. And we don't function well when we are calling on our nervous system 24/7. And I do mean 24 hours because there's people who have nightmares and difficult sleep. So even though you might be lying down in bed, you might still be feeling that
restless
nervous system, that restlessness, those fears, those anxieties, however fear happens for you. And there's a lot of different versions of fear. But along with that mindset of gentleness, along with taking this rest and, asking for help, this other part of it is managing your emotions and your nervous system. And you can definitely kind of work with your nervous system on a fully physical level. And there's a lot of pieces you can do, such as working with polyvagal theory and all these exciting new ideas. But one of the simplest things that you can do is to prioritize, to really commit to serving your own emotional balance. So when you get yourself worked up in whatever kind of emotional state that you tend to go with, maybe it's anger, maybe it's impatience, maybe it's anxiety or worry, we all have our own pattern or places that we go when it's not good. When you go there, the nervous system kicks into gear and has to kind of help you manage that. And it becomes raw when you're doing it all the time. So when you're living these huge ups and huge downs and not kind of working on getting more steady, it's kind of like living on the ocean during a big storm. It takes a lot of energy just to get from port to port. Whereas if we can kind of soothe our emotions, which takes work, by the way, right? Whether you need to do therapy, whether you need to work on your own stuff, whether you need to read self-help books, whatever you use to get your nervous system calmer and to manage your emotional state is going to be better. But I think what a lot of people do is they stuff it all down and say, oh, I'll feel that later. I got shit to do. And that's not that helpful either, because that stuff's still there. And the nervous system, it knows that just got put into the storage trunk and it's going to have to be processed at some point. It doesn't go away. It just mounts up. And so just like we talked about the brain needing to be cleansed and refreshed, our emotional storage tank, or whatever you want to call it, is exactly the same. And this is also a water element issue, is making emotional hygiene. And by that, I mean kind of steadying out some of the extreme highs and extreme lows, whether you need to, use medication, if that helps you stay even, by all means, do it. That is a wonder from modern medicine. If it's used correctly, use the tools that make you thrive. And, this, like, I should be tough and I shouldn't have to use antidepressants. Nonsense. Use what's going to help your body to really thrive. But prioritize. If you see that you are always in anger states, or always in fights with your boyfriend, or always in fill in the blank, know that never gives the emotional aspect, that nervous system that's processing those emotions, time to truly recover. So whether you need to learn meditation, take a walk in the forest, ride your horse on a really chill, trail ride in nature, swim in the ocean, whatever your replenish tool is. And it can be as simple as, sitting in a chair with your feet on the ground, with your eyes shut, and breathing deeply into your belly for 3 minutes. That's going to help that emotional regulation, which helps the nervous system get to a place of calm. And when you get to a place of calm, that's when you get to earn the resilience. That's when you get the toughness, because it's coming from a place of strength instead of a place from, I'm going to fight for staying strong. Really, I am. I'm here. I'm present. I'm strong because I'm here and it's good. Life is good. I trust. I feel safe. And we can give that to our horses as well. As prey animals, they teach us about that safety lesson every single day and how to get better with it.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing this, because I'm thinking of that reflection, Susan, with our horses, right? So
100%.
For those of you, I mean, probably a lot of you, I don't need to get too into this, but it's that idea, like when you're having, let's say like an emotionally interesting day, and you take that into the paddock with you. For most horses, they're going to be co-regulating off of you.
100%.
And, some of you have those 1 in a million horses that calm you right down and just totally anchor you, but usually it's the other way around. And they're like, what are you doing here? Why are you in my space? You feel terrible.
Yeah, Anna Blake has a wonderful blog post she put out recently about our eyes. And we think we're being so calm and so relaxed. And she was talking about coyote eyes.
Staring.
We come in with this like staring. And because we're so stressed, like maybe, for those of you that aren't animal professionals, let's say that you come from an office job or some sort of stressy job, and you come out, you want to ride your horse or do something in the round pound or whatever you want to do, and you haven't cleaned that out yet. You come in with that intensity. No wonder that horse doesn't want to learn. It's not a safe learning environment because you are too freaking intense. Whereas if you take those moments and you take that breath, and literally, if you do it enough, it becomes a skill. it's not that there's some gifted people that are over here that can do that intuitive stuff. Like, no, this is a skill that all of us can harness, all of us can cultivate, that over time you can get better at grounding and clearing your system and getting calmer on demand. And so that, I'm going to leave my work at work. I'm now at the barn. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take that 30 seconds, that 3 minutes, whatever it is that it takes you. Or maybe you realize when you take those 3 minutes that you can't do it. And so today is not the day to try that new skill you wanted to do in the round pen. Today's the day that you go out and you take a walk together in the forest, because that's all you've got to give. But that teaches your horse that you're safe. That teaches your horse that you're taking care of your end of the bargain. And that builds trust and connection and progress with the horse. So
Right.
if all it does is, if I need to motivate you through better horse performance to get you to do these good things for yourself, great. I don't care. It's whether you're motivated by yourself and just feeling better in your body, or whether you're motivated by, other kinds of gifts that come from these practices, go for it.
Yeah, I love that, because I think, it is a practice in itself to know, what am I capable and ready for today? Because very often we'll push ourselves beyond that as that whole like gritty and, I can endure this. I can, I can make things happen, force things to happen in ourselves, when, okay, what's going to be really actually the most productive thing, not in a linear sense of like, well, I have to ride 6 days a week and I have to, and it has to look like this, and we have to be skill building, but instead, like you're sharing, Susan, like taking a step back and actually going, what's going to be the trust builder? What's going to be taking care of me and supporting this sort of building of the gentleness, the sense of caring for self, because that at the end of the day, I think builds a much stronger, like, yeah, we'll maybe have a really fit horse, but like, both of us are not well regulated, or
Right.
we could be, maybe a little less fit, but like
Right.
well regulated and together and working in a sense of like safety and cooperation together. And that for me is like, oh yeah,
So
that feels a lot better.
it
Mhm.
reminds me of this experience I had that was so telling. It was so telling. It's very old now, but back in the 1994, the World Cup games was in the Netherlands, and the U.S. endurance team was there, and I was working with them, and we were sitting around the night before the big race, and you have high performers, right? These are absolute elite endurance riders that have incredible horses and incredible teams behind them and all that great stuff. And someone was sitting at the table and they were saying, blah, blah, blah. Oh, because all of us here are type A personalities. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not a type A personality. I'm here to be the type B or whatever the other one is, to be the soft one that gives the massage, that gives the acupressure, that gives the recovery. So I kind of prided myself, like I'm so above that, right? I'm so together, and this is something they don't know. And the endurance riders, they're pushing so hard, and I need to teach them something. Forgetting, of course, that the way I push myself during those endurance rides, they start at 5 a.m. So you are up at 3 and you are serving horses until the wee hours of the morning. Like, come on, Susan, who are you trying to kid? It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And so I think there's all these continuums, but we love that performance and we love that push because it feels good. It's stimulating. It's exciting, and there's adventures involved. But we sometimes just need that step back to kind of see, now, what's the real truth of my situation here?
Yeah, because when we're in it, it's really hard to see that, right? It's really hard to see. And we often will, like you say, with the endurance riders, just surround yourself with people that kind of live the same way as you, right? And so it can be a challenge, sometimes even putting ourselves into, well, not putting ourselves, but like shifting up our scenario, putting ourselves maybe into a scenario where we're surrounded by some different types of people that are living in different ways. Like, I know that was big for me, is like, once I started to see, like this person is very relaxed and they don't seem nearly as stressed as me about all these things, and watching their patterns and watching how they did their life and how they cared for themselves, that actually was So it's very supportive for me in terms of like some of the changes that I wanted to make
Yep.
on my health journey, right? And taking ourselves out of maybe something that's super comfortable for us because it's like
Yeah.
normal and I know it and it's
Yep.
like regular for me, and looking beyond the veil at some other lifestyles or other choices that we could possibly be making that might be a lot more supportive in our long-term sense of just restoration and sustainability, really, right? Yeah.
And I had a lot of that, talking about COVID a lot today, but right before COVID, I'd gone through a period of about 3 years when I was the fittest I've ever been in my entire life. And I've had some times that I was pretty fit, but that was a real peak for me. I was working out of the gym, I was lifting weights, I was doing barbell. I mean, I was killing it. And I felt great. Like at the time, I thought I was doing really great, even though these niggling joint issues. I had some indications that maybe not so much, but I was ignoring those quite actively. And then COVID hit and I couldn't go to the gym instantly, right? So it was this realization of I slept in those early weeks. I slept and I slept. I was sleeping like 12 hours a day for like the first 2 months. It was nuts. I was like, why, what's going on here? I stopped moving, which, I mean, that wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it was clearly at that point what I needed. And I found that anytime now that I try to return to those levels of physical performance, which I always found invigorating and exhilarating, I either get re-injured or I just feel exhausted. Like I want to go and like take a nap after the workout. That's not how you're supposed to feel. And so I've had to kind of like, oh gosh, I can only do walks in the forest. Now, we have a lot of hills around here. It's not like I am, I'm slacking off. I'm doing some pretty vigorous walks or doing that kind of thing. But I had to also return to, I hadn't done Tai Chi. I did it for years and years in the 90s, but I realized I got to get back to that because that center isn't doing well. And, taking up energetic practices. So for some people, that'll be yoga. For others, that will be Tai Chi, or I have really embraced Qigong. That has been a game changer for me. And I realized, no, wait a minute, when I do Qigong and I'm kind of circulating energy through my body, it feels like I just got an acupuncture session just by circulating that qi, which that's pretty cool. But it has actually left my body feeling not only nourished and gently stimulated and supported, but I actually feel incredibly stronger with these movements that look so gentle. Like I can't be getting strong with that, but I am. So it's fascinating for this, fitness nut to realize, chill out, babe. That wasn't sustainable. Those little niggly things were gonna blow up on you. And instead, there's another way that you can move that's sustainable, that is going to be gentler to you. So if, some people, they have, they like to do marathons, whatever works for you, that's great. But I have found that as a culture, at least in the US, a lot of us really love looking at these kind of extreme sports like climbing Mount Everest and realizing there's other ways to get movement that maybe are more gentle and actually healthier for you.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I'm like, that's so my story. So, we're starting to move towards wrapping up here today, but it's so important to recognize like what feels good, what works for your body, what is sustainable when it comes to exercise or movement. Like for me, it's like I dance, I walk as well, like a lot of walking in the woods. The only time I can run, it's kind of hilarious, is like if I'm with my horses. Because it's like playful and we just like run together in the field. And if I tried to like actually go for a run, my body would be like, no, this is not a thing. So it's really cool to find, what's my sweet spot as far as like moving my system in a good way so that I get all these beautiful benefits like lymphatic movement and shaking the stuff out and emotional clarity and regulation. Like there's all sorts of beautiful benefits to moving, right? So I love that. I also wanted to mention sometimes I'll do like, so I think Susan, you had a handout that you were going to give, possibly put on the page there. One of my favorites is like holding my K27s and doing breathing practice, or just giving them a nice like little massage. So the K27s are, you can look them up on
I'll put them in the handout.
You'll put them in the handout. Susan will put them in the handout of the
Why not?
wholehorse.ca page, but they're right under the clavicles next to the sternum. They tend to be a little tender, and they're a great one to work with that kidney meridian, that water element, and support around just a down regulation.
Yep.
And I really, really like working with them. So yeah, so go if you want Susan's. She always does amazing handouts. You do amazing handouts.
I can't not do handouts.
I'm impressed. I'm always impressed. So if you want it, it will be at wholehorse.ca under Susan's episode. I think it's episode 106. This one.
Congratulations for crossing that 100
Thank you. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So you can head there. Thank you so much, Susan, for today. This is just a pleasure as always.
Thank you. I always look forward to these, because I just know that you and your people, they get it. Like, we haven't figured it all out, but we have the right open mind that's going to take us in the right direction. And I think the last thing that I would say is that think of the seasons. The seasons, if you live in a 4-season climate, we all love summer, we all love fall, we love that harvest, we love in our lives being able to harvest the benefits of our labors, et cetera, et cetera. But then what comes next is winter. Rest is supposed to be built into the package. And if you went straight from the harvest to spring, which is, everything coming out again, it wouldn't work. You'd just be depleting and depleting and depleting. You'd miss that important part of the cycle. So I think if we can just remember that this is all part of the natural cycle, we'll do better. And it's hard to retrain, but it's worth the effort.
All right, everybody. Lots of rest. Wishing you lots of good rest. Yes, and thank you for all being you and listening in today. I hope you learned a little thing or two. I know I did. Thank you again, Susan. And
always my pleasure.
I'm sure we'll be back again
probably
together soon. Awesome. Okay, everyone. Bye for now.